Hey everybody, Jimmy from Superpath. Today we have our Vibe Coding for Content Marketers workshop. I feel this is kind of an important, this is a very important time for content marketers. The skill set is changing. All of us suddenly have the ability to code. So what do we do with that? So we have actually 4 presenters today. Tim Metz from Animals is going to start. Then we'll have Sammy Kraus from Lex, who's going to give us a quick demo of Lex's newest tools. Then we have Sean Blanda and Katie Parrott. So we've got 2 hours. I know 2 hours is a long time. This will all be recorded. Hang out, come and go as you need to. Use the live chat. I'll be moderating and queuing up questions for the presenters as we go. We have left some Q&A time at the end of each of these, but if there's something you want to ask, like pertaining to whatever the presenter's talking about that second, let me know. I'll queue it up for you. I want to give quick shout out to our 2 sponsors. We have 2 sponsors, Lex and Riverside, who have been kind and generous enough to sponsor this workshop. Lex, if you haven't tried it already, is an AI writing tool that really undersells it. It's like a personal trainer for your writing. So it doesn't do it for you, but it helps you write better. I was a paying customer of Lex before they became a partner of Superpath's. I think the tool is incredible. If you want to get a discount on it, use the code SP15. That will get you 15% off your first month or your first year. Also, we've got Riverside. So we're doing this event on Riverside. Again, we were doing this before Riverside was a partner because I think the tool is fantastic. People know it best as a way to record podcasts, which is it is. It's how we record the Superpath podcast, but it's great for a lot of other things too, like running live events, webinars, workshops, customer interviews. The recording is all very high quality, which is awesome for the publishing and distribution of the content later, but there's also AI powered editing, which makes it really easy to clean up or splice into clips later on. You can check Riverside out at riverside.fm, and hopefully today's event is a good demonstration of what a cool product it is. All right, cool. Tim will jump in here. We have a lot to cover, and we'll do our best to stick to our timeline. Once Tim gets rolling, I'll put the timeline in the chat so everyone can see it. But we have 30 minutes for each presenter, with the exception of Lex, which will be 15 minutes. And we're just going to keep rolling right through each one. So, Tim, you are the Director of Marketing and Innovation at Animals, where I used to work. Fond memories of that, although we didn't overlap. You've been doing a ton of cool AI work. You built an SEO calculator for Animals, which hopefully we'll get to see. So why don't we dive in? Could you do an introduction of yourself, please? And then tell us a little bit about what we're going to see today, and then let's dive into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jimmy. And thanks for inviting me to show this. Yeah, so I'm running marketing and innovation at Animals. So I get to do all the content and things like that for ourselves. But also the innovation part is mostly playing around with AI and trying to use it for our own marketing. And then with the things we learn there, we then bring some of that to our customers. So that's the innovation part of what I do there. And as part of that, one of the things we did was try to build this SEO forecasting tool that I'll get into in a sec. But I think the other thing that's good to know is that I'm really not a coder, but I did do a bit of HTML in the 90s, and I've had some product roles and startup experience. So I think I do have kind of this sense of like how to talk to a developer and how to work with designers. And I think that's actually quite helpful as you work with these, as you're doing vibe coding, as we'll see in a bit. And I guess the only other thing I would say is we're kind of doing it backwards because I'm in Koh Samui, so it's midnight here. Because we're starting with Cursor, which is kind of the most complex tool. But that was because otherwise, after this, I can go to sleep. But so don't worry if it feels a bit overwhelming. I'm trying to make it easy, but it's only going to get easier after my presentation, I think.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim, for staying up so late to do this.
No, that's totally fine.
We appreciate it.
Should we get into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, no, sure. All right. So yeah, I guess the thing before we really dive into it, I would say, I think what's very important that I find is that prompt engineering and things like that is not that important, actually. It's much more about how you communicate. So I think if you know how to work with a freelancer, you're kind of already halfway there. Because you just really talk to it. You'll see that in a bit. You kind of really talk to it in normal, natural language. And what's much more important than kind of thinking about how should I prompt it and things like that, it's much more important to give it the right context and explain what your goal is and things like that. And so what I'm going to show you is how we built this SEO forecasting tool. And it's kind of good to know why we built that and how it came about, because I'm going to use some of that material to build the tool. So actually at Animals, our CEO Ty and our head of SEO Aideen, they at some point posted this message in Slack saying, hey, we built this kind of tool template to forecast your organic traffic. And it was an Excel sheet, and it was cool what it did. But they were like, oh, we're going to post this on LinkedIn tomorrow. And I was like, this kind of looks very ugly. And I had just started to try a little bit of vibe coding. So I said, I think in 1 hour, I can turn this into an app. So that's kind of how this whole SEO calculator started. And it's important to note that because those materials that came from that initial template is what I used as input. And so I'm now going to actually first go to Claude, which is a bit surprising, you might think, because we're going to use Cursor. But I kind of use Claude, and you could also use ChatGPT, more as a kind of product manager or CTO or chief product officer to kind of talk through the product or to talk through the project so that it creates a good brief. And then I will bring that brief actually to Cursor, because Cursor is really like a developer and loves to code, but it kind of loses the overview in all the code. So that's why it's good to kind of start in Claude, kind of talk through the project, create the brief, and then you give that brief to Cursor. So that's what we're going to do now, or at least I'm going to show you how I did that. So I'm going to share my screen. Is it this one? Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let me just move this here. Yeah. All right. So we're here in Claude. I'm just gonna run through it pretty quickly because some of this takes a little bit of time. But so basically what I did here is like I took the Excel sheet that Ty made. He made a little video internally to explain it, like a little loom of 4 minutes. So I used the transcript of that, and we had a little wiki entry, and I took some screenshots. And so here what I'm kind of saying is just like, hey, we want to build this tool. Here are the files attached that explain it. And one important thing also in Claude is that I said, I don't want you to write the actual code because otherwise Claude is going to code. And I said, I want you to create a brief for my developer, Cursor, but let's talk through it. And then after that, I'm going to give you some visual reference for the UX. So then based on this information.
Hey, Tim, real quick, sorry to interrupt you. We can't, if you're trying to show a screen, we lost it.
Oh, really? Oh, maybe it's because I moved this to another screen. Let me try it again. Yeah, no, you got to see my screen. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yeah, there we go. Can everybody see it?
Okay.
There we go. Yeah, live chat says we can see it. Thanks, Tim. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry about that. So yeah, you can see here what I attached. You can see here the prompt that I was just describing. And then I say, okay, let's go. So then Claude builds this whole project brief. And then normally I would read through this in detail. You can see the good thing here also is like, of course, you can talk to it, right? So if you see any technical terms, like for example, you say, what is React or why they're using React, you can ask that, of course. But so I let it build this whole development brief. It has some questions for me here that I answered, like, should we implement user accounts, for example? I say, no, I don't want user accounts, blah, blah. So it updates the brief a little bit. So I have this whole brief. And then I say, okay, let's do the UX. So I attached our brand visual, our style guide, and actually a screenshot of Revive, which is another tool we did before. And I said, okay, here are brand colors and a screenshot of another tool. So can you mock up design based on this? And this is why I'm just going through this quickly because this takes a bit of time. But so essentially here, it took all these colors, it put it in the brief. It mocked up something here, which I actually didn't really like because it looked a little bit too much like Revive. So I gave it a comment on that. But basically, we got this whole brief ready here. And then this is what I'm going to take to Cursor. So this is Cursor. And I'll first give you a quick explanation of what we're seeing. So on the left, you see the structure of your project. So basically, this is a folder on your computer. And now it's empty. But you'll see that this will start to fill up with files and folders that Cursor starts to build. Then here in the middle is where you'll start to see all the code. So this is where normal developers spend most of their time, at least before AI. And that's where we will spend basically none of our time ever. And then here on the side is the AI chat. So this is where we talk with our code base, essentially. And this is a bit like when you talk to Claude or ChatGPT. And so this is also where we're going to paste in that brief that we just made. So I put it here in Notion just so I can easily copy it. This was the prompt for Claude. And then here's what I have for Cursor. So the only thing I add at the top is below is a project plan. Can you read through it and ask me questions? And do not start coding yet. So Cursor loves to code. So if I'm going to give this, it's going to immediately start coding. But I want it to first consider the brief also and look at it and ask me if it has any questions. So, but then below this is what Claude prepared for us. And so I'm going here to the chat, paste this in, and then I say send, and then it's going to start thinking. It's going to read the brief. It's kind of talking you see its thoughts essentially, and then it will probably come back with some questions. Yeah, I say, okay, based on your SEO traffic brief, I have a few questions. Now I'm going to be very lazy, and I'm going to copy these questions with this copy button, and I'm not going to answer them myself. I'm going to give them to Claude because Claude has all this information. And I just did a dry run of this, so we have some of these questions here, so I kind of overwrite them and do it again. But so basically, you just copy these questions for Claude, and then we let Claude answer them. That's how I sometimes feel as a vibe coder. I'm just kind of a messenger boy between different AI models. And then Claude is going to think about these questions for a little bit. And then normally I would read through these very carefully, of course. But now we just say, okay, the calculation methodologies, data persistence, it's client side. Doesn't matter. How many keywords maximum? So it says maximum 300 to 500 keywords. So of course, again, like normally you should, because the more time you spend here on this brief, the better your first thing is going to be that you build with Cursor. It's all it needs. And then we're going to bring this back to Cursor, but I'm going to add this. I have a little bit of a prompt here to start the project with, because this is what we just copied in. It's quite long. But here's, okay, below your answers, if you have info, let's start building. And then I put this warning because sometimes it will create a folder within a folder. So I'm trying to tell it to just start in the current folder. This is from before when I did my test, so I'll just overwrite this. So I basically just paste here the answers I got from Claude, and then we go here, and now it will start. So this is for me. Okay, so now the only thing we need to keep an eye on, because sometimes it does this, it will sometimes get confused at the beginning. Basically, we're in the folder already, and then it might start to make another folder in here, the same folder, and that can lead to some problems. So I'm just keeping an eye on that for a second. But here you see it starts to do all this stuff that is really complicated and I have no idea what it's doing. Like it's installing all kinds of packages that it gets from the brief. And it looks like it's not making a duplicate folder. I just want to be sure this works. Because once this is going, then it's off to the races. And then we just can talk about other things for 4 minutes or 5 minutes as it's building here. Let's see. And sometimes you'll see here, if it's on one of these where it says pop out in terminal, it gets stuck on something. Let me open this to see what it's doing. No, it's okay. See, it just keeps going. It's creating folders here. Let's create our main HTML file. Okay, so now it's just going to be working for the next 3, 4, 5 minutes. I would say normally you could try to keep an eye on it so you have some sense of what's going on, but it's going so fast usually that's kind of impossible. And at the end, it will give a summary of what it did. So it's kind of useful to read through that summary, because over time, you'll start to notice some patterns. And especially if you're trying to fix a bug or a problem, by reading the summary, you'll at some point realize if it's kind of stuck in a loop trying to do the same thing. But yeah, if there's some questions, we have time for them, because this can take 4 or 5 minutes. You can just see Cursor work in the background.
Yeah, for sure. Someone asked, Tim, what do you do if it does create a duplicate folder?
So yeah, that's a good question. So if it does create a duplicate folder, you hit stop here, and then you just say in the chat, you say, hey, don't create a duplicate folder. We're already in the project folder, and then that will be enough. And then it will say, oh yeah, you're right. And then it will just remove the duplicate folder and all the duplicate files, and then it will continue. So that's really the only thing. And Gotcha. It usually almost only happens at the beginning. So that's the thing to keep an eye on.
Gotcha. Ernie posted in the chat, not a question, but a suggestion to learn some of the very basics of code to make vibe coding easier. And he posted a link to a website where you can do that. I'm just curious from your perspective, Tim, like how useful is it now having some background in this to be able to build an app like the forecasting tool?
Well, I was thinking about it like 6 months ago, but especially like, I think it's now about a month ago or something, that this new, like Cursor added a new version of their agent combined with Claude 3.7 Sonnet. It's just so good that like there's almost no mistakes, just like little mistakes, but I almost never get really stuck. Like I can almost always fix it. And if I'm really stuck, the only thing I sometimes do is I bring it to O1 Pro, which is kind of my Mr. Wolf. And then I do a similar thing as what I just showed you with Claude. I will basically ask in the chat here to say, what is the problem? What have you already tried? Which solutions have we tried and it's not working? And then I just copy paste that into O1 Pro. And then O1 Pro usually comes up with the solution. And then I go back to the chat here with the solution. And so, yeah, I feel the need for learning how to code less and less. Like I felt it more 6 months ago. And I'm kind of starting to think like, yeah, I mean, of course, if you already know how to do it, it's useful, but I would not necessarily spend my time there now. Does that answer the question? Or
no, I think so. One thing I found to be helpful in my own vibe coding adventures is like I write scripts that then I want to run on a schedule. And I have a couple workflows that use a similar setup. So I had absolutely no clue. Like, this sounds so silly when I say it, but like, what is GitHub? Like, why would the code need to be there? What is Heroku? And like, how do I set Heroku up so that it will help me run this on a schedule? How do I make sure that code that Cursor puts out ends up in GitHub in the right place so that Heroku can run? Like that to me was totally foreign. Even though I could go in Claude, it would write the code. I had to figure out what do I actually do with it.
Yeah. No, I actually had a comment about that because it's written down to talk about. So it's nice you bring that up. So GitHub basically, I mean, I think the best way it's kind of like your save game for your code. It's like you say, okay, save this to GitHub, and then you have a version of exactly how it was at that point that you can always go back to. But when I was building this tool, which was in November, I needed to use this cheat sheet that I have here with all these Git commands. So it's like start a new Git and like add this to Git and whatever. And it was so confusing, and I had so many mess ups just because of that. And actually, since this new agent is here, I never have to use that because I just tell the agent, I was like, make a Git commit, and it will just do it. And it's like, it will do everything. So it will name it. It can go back. So I can say, oh, go back to the Git where we just added the calculation and that it was working or something. So since this agent is out, I literally never have to use any of this anymore. So that's cool. Another point. It's like I kind of feel like looking at the last few months that it's also like it's getting easier in a way, and like it's never going to get harder than it is today. It's like it's only going to get easier, which is also kind of a crazy insight. So let's see how it's doing here.
Yeah. Can I ask you one more quick question? Someone asked about,
it's still,
assuming you're paying for Claude, are you using the API plan? And then also Cursor, are you paying for Cursor? And do you know off the top of your head which tier you're on?
So I'm paying for Claude and I'm paying for Cursor. And I think I'm just on the first paid tier. I don't know what it's called. But then the other thing, it's also an interesting question because actually you can choose. Oh, it's ready. Let's see. It's exciting. See if it works. Oh, here we go. There is an SEO projection tool, and I can put a CSV here. So basically what it does is it's pretty basic, but like you put in your domain authority, you can say how many posts per month. And then here you can drop a CSV file with keywords. So I prepared a sample one and I put it in. Please fix the missing required columns. Keyword volume. Okay, so the CSV file doesn't work. Let's first see if it can do sample data. Use sample data. That doesn't work. Okay, so now we go here because I can say, can you make the CSV input more flexible? I will show it where's my demo file here? So just take this demo file and I'll say, here. So I just copy the CSV file into it and I'll say, I want to use this format file. I should have said import actually. Let's see if it understands what I mean. Use to make the CSV more flexible. Make the CSV more flexible. Oh, it's lowercase column headers. It's modifying. So whilst doing that, maybe we can answer the question of pricing. So actually here it has, you can choose different models here. And it's actually quite interesting because the one I'm using at the moment costs $5 per request. So this is like the super mode basically. And I tend to use that when at the start of a project because then it has the biggest context, has the biggest reasoning power, and it can make a difference, especially if you have a really complicated problem or if you're just starting a project. I'd rather spend 5 extra cents to set it up properly, but then most of the time if you just go on auto select, it's fine, and it doesn't really cost anything extra. So you might end up spending a little bit extra depending on the models you choose here. And yeah, and I would definitely, if you're serious about it, I would definitely pay for the paid version. But I think I don't know if it's 10 or 20 bucks per month, something like that.
That's pretty cool. I find the way that these tools charge for API credits to be incredibly confusing. Like I have no idea how many credits or whatever. 5 cents sounds like nothing, but like do you spend $1,000? I have no idea. I assume that that will become more clear as these tools develop more.
Yeah. Well, one thing is you can ask the tools. That's kind of interesting. So you can say, if I have, like, if I have this many words or whatever, I have this much code. Like, how much do you think it's going to cost, right? And
that's cool.
And then you kind of say, okay, so it's updated to. You can now apply and let's see if it works now. I don't know if I have to reload it. I think it should just work. File selected, calculate. Okay, so we get here calculation. This looks a bit weird, but yeah, I mean, this kind of, as a first version, it's working. It's doing something weird with these first months. So basically from here, I would now start to say, okay, now I can just talk to it. So I could say, it looks like something is off with these first months, for example, or I want this button to move a bit lower, or things like that. One thing I also did, which and I think that's also kind of like, so of course you can talk about it, you can you can tweak things in UX just by talking to it here in the chat. You can also drop screenshots. So what I do most of the time is like, if I would think that this button is needs to be a bit lower, I would take a screenshot of this and I would just say, I want this button, and you paste it. So it has the screenshot here. I want this button to be a bit lower. So you can do all that kind of stuff. But what I spent most time on with this tool was actually to try to get the forecasting algorithm right. So one thing I did was use deep research to get all kinds of SEO benchmarks, and then give that report to Cursor here and say, here's a report with common SEO benchmarks. Can you apply this to our calculation logic? And then again, it will be off for like a few minutes working on the calculation logic. But I think that's a very quick overview of how you can build with Cursor. Are there any specific parts that you would want to zoom into or have questions about?
Questions. We have some stuff coming in the chat, and Phil, this is a good time for questions for Tim. Ronnie says, so you're saying you can use Cursor to develop algorithms? Could you?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, crazy. So in this forecasting, somewhere in here, there is a forecasting algorithm. And at the moment in this one, it's very basic because it's just coming from our template. But essentially, so what I have here is, I've researched this benchmark report with deep research from ChatGPT. Maybe I can show it to you here. So it's taken all this stuff from what it has found from all kinds of sources, Ahrefs, Backlinko, and it's turned this into a huge report with all kinds of benchmarks on SEO. And then basically I just copy paste this into Cursor and I say, use this to improve to expand our forecasting algorithm. And then it will start building that. So you can definitely do that. Yeah.
One person a few minutes ago had asked, how did the functionality of the original spreadsheet compare to what you ultimately push live?
That's not comparable, because what I spent the most time on was like trying to get the calculation right. And so in the beginning, I didn't really know how to do it. So it was kind of whack-a-mole, because it'd be like, I would try something and then be like, oh, this looks really weird because something with very low keyword difficulty doesn't, somebody with a high domain authority can't rank for it, so it doesn't make sense. Then I would fix that, but then I would get the inverse problem. So it's just kind of like running around the whole time trying to get that how it calculates that right. That was actually the most difficult thing. But so it's much more sophisticated than the original template, but maybe I tried to make it a little bit too sophisticated, and that made it very complex and cost me a lot of time.
Gotcha. We have Josh asked a question who several people are upvoting. Says, can you talk a little bit about deployment? The biggest struggles I've had are moving from localhost to production.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what I've been using is called Vercel. And what I did there, basically, like I had never worked with Vercel, and Andrew, who also used to work at Animals and also works with you now, Jimmy, like he told me like you need to use Vercel. And so basically, Vercel takes your project from GitHub. And again, this all sounds really complicated, but essentially, I just tell Cursor to get it on GitHub, and then Vercel takes it from GitHub. Then I got stuck. And then I just talked with Claude or ChatGPT and say, okay, first of all, I have no idea what I'm doing. I want to get this live. What should I do? Right. And then it will just tell you step by step kind of how to do it. I think there are also other solutions similar to Vercel, but I find, again, I don't really know what I'm doing. But if I put screenshots and just constantly describe what it's telling me, it will get me through it. And then once I've done it once, then after that, it's pretty easy. But yeah, I just use Claude or ChatGPT to kind of help me with that kind of stuff.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah, I do find myself when I'm doing this, every now and then Claude will provide some instructions and I will say, hold on, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, explain it like I'm five, and then it will, which is awesome.
Yeah. And just drop the error messages or the screenshots and just say, look, I'm getting this error, right? It will also happen here. Like sometimes you get an error in the chat, and then you can actually, this is kind of cool to see. If you see an error message here, you can just add it to the chat. So it has it here. And then I just say, I get this error. Like, I don't know, and then it usually just goes and fix it.
That's cool. Is it cool if I just throw more at you, Tim? Colin asked a question. Curious if you missed this, is there a database?
In this one, there is not a database, but I have done another project that has a database, and it's kind of the same thing. And actually, Cursor at some point just told me, like, we need a database, and I was like, I don't know. He said, go make an account on Neon and then go give me this and this. And then I gave it that and that. And then it's like, okay. And then it was setting up the database. And then now sometimes I do something and say, oh, let me migrate the database. Like, and I know that this kind of stuff used to be like super complex, right? But it will just do almost all of it for you. Yeah.
Really cool. Another question from Jasmine. Deploy on a subdomain. Is that the easiest way to do it?
Yeah. And then you would set that up in a tool like Versal. So in Versal, you can then say, okay, this is the subdomain that I want to run it on. So basically, Versal just takes the whole app and then runs it there. But one other thing I would say that's kind of cool with Cursor is that you can also create local Python scripts to run on your computer. So then you're not really building something for somebody else, but just for yourself. For example, to query your GA4 data or something like that. Then you just do that. Then you don't have to deploy. So there's also that aspect, which is a bit different. But yeah, you can use it for creating kind of handy scripts for all kinds of stuff that you might want to do on your own computer.
I've got another one for you from Courtney, who asks about security. And you may not know the answer to this, Tim, so that's okay. They ask, if I'm inputting something like Spreadsheet with private data, my company has no policy, am I at risk of sharing this private data? I assume that probably depends to some degree on the terms and conditions of the company that the tools that you're using.
Yeah. I think if you're putting it, I think Cursor is definitely not sharing or taking any of your confidential information, because you can have very confidential, like you also have a special file with your passwords if you use APIs and things like that. And Cursor actually will tell you, like, don't send this file to GitHub because it has and it will prevent you from doing that. But of course, if you're using like Claude, and Claude is actually more privacy focused than ChatGPT. But if you're using ChatGPT in the way that I was just using Claude, then you need to be a bit careful, because ChatGPT does train on your data. So you don't want to put confidential information in there. And of course, if you push something public, if you put it like on a live link or something like that, then the information might be exposed. But again, if you that's something I would mention or discuss with Claude when you're making kind of the project brief and say, it's going to use very confidential information. How should we make sure that this is secure? And I think it will actually be pretty good at talking you through how to do that.
Awesome. There's so many things in the live chat. I'm trying to keep track of all of them. One thing I'll do after this is I will export the live chat. I'll clean it up with Claude and I'll send it out, because there's so much good stuff. People are sharing a lot of cool links in here.
Okay, nice. Well, and that's the other thing, right? I kind of shared it today on LinkedIn as a joke, but it's like I've been vibe coding since Christmas, more or less, right? So I'm also learning every day.
That's cool. On the security note, the other day I was trying to build a Slack app, and I put in my bot token, which is unique for that individual Slack app, into Claude, and it told me, no, don't, like, you're doing something unsafe right now. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that. I thought that was okay. It's cool that some of these tools are building that in now.
Yeah, Cursor will do the same. Yeah.
Cool. Sorry.
I'm also.
Sorry. Go ahead, Tim. I have another one for you when you're ready.
Okay. Yeah. No, I just want to say, like, and if anything, because I know I went pretty quickly through the prompts and stuff like that, because we know we had little time, but I'm happy to put those somewhere if that's helpful and people can look.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, if we can include that as part of our follow-up, that'd be great. Another question from Jasmine Jade, who asks, if you build a project people have to log into, how do you handle security and transactional emails? That's really interesting.
Well, so I haven't built something with transactional emails, but like I know that Nathan, one of my coworkers at Animals, like he's built an app where he basically has a login, because this doesn't have a login, right? It's just you go there, you can put the keyword data. But if you want to build a login, you can, for example, say, I want to use Google login, or I want to use like, what's another one? Authenticate or whatever. And
Auth0 maybe.
It's the same thing. Like it will talk you through how to implement that. And I did build something with ConvertKit. Actually, in the final version of the SEO forecaster, there's also a connection with our Animals ConvertKit account. And that goes through the API. So I'm pretty sure if you have a transactional email provider, you probably have an API. And then either most of the time, all these tools already have read all API documentation that is available. And if they have not, then you just copy paste basically the API documentation into the tool, and then it will read through it, and then it will be able to build the API connection.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. We vibe coded a solution to help a B2B writer emails. So when a source sends an email, it sends a notification to the writer who originally submitted that request. We used to run that on Zapier, and it cost like $500 a month to run it on Zapier. Now we use a Python script that checks the inbox every 10 minutes or so, and then uses the Gmail API to send them, and I think it costs $7 a month, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And like, it was really easy to set up actually. Twilio would be the more sophisticated option, but we ended up not even needing it in this case.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Okay, so many other questions. Eric is making fun of me about my vibe coding, what we do in Slack. Cecilia asked, from an email marketing perspective, what do you think is the best way to use it? I'm not sure if that refers to the tool and the way that you might use it from a marketing perspective, Tim, or like the way you might build in email notifications. But since we're talking about the marketing use case here, like, what has been your experience with the tool? Like, I assume it's designed primarily for lead gen. Has it proven to be effective?
Yeah, it's pretty effective. Yeah. So yeah, people go, they use the tool, and then like we didn't want to gate it up front. So it's more like once people have done a forecast, then they get prompted to like leave their email address and then get a report mailed to them. So it does have this email component, and that gets us some emails. I would say that Revive does better, but it's also in terms of lead gen, because people have to sign up in advance, but they also get a little bit more value out of that. Whereas here I thought, well, you just get this forecast. Obviously it's not like whatever it was, it's like military grade forecast, but it's just kind of a good directional indication of what you can expect. And I didn't want to gate that up front. But I think there would be ways to increase the kind of leads that we could see from it. But we've also just put it out there and then see how it goes. And there's still a ton of ideas that we have to make it better.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah, it kind of works. Yeah.
Super cool. I think that engineering as marketing has always been a thing, but it used to be a really hard thing to do. Just difficult to get dev resources to build free tools, calculators, quizzes, even like freemium apps that might be a pipeline into a larger product. And now I think marketing teams, now that we have the ability to create these kind of things, it kind of opens up a whole new category of the type of marketing you might do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Curtis asked a question: could I potentially create a scheduling tool like Calendly myself? Is SaaS going to be over? You probably could. I mean, that sounds like a really fun project. Is SaaS going to be over? I don't know. I mean, one interesting thing I think about this is like, say you have a use case you would normally use a SaaS product for, but it's really specific and it's hard to customize the existing tools out there. Like now you could build a custom solution, and that's actually not the build versus buy conversation has changed significantly.
Yeah. I would like I started with a similar thing where I'm trying to build my own Loom because I don't want to pay that much for Loom. I like what it does, but I'm like, can I not do this myself? But it's actually pretty hard. But I would say one advice if you try something like that is like, and maybe even let like Claude help you with that, is like, what is the real MVP? Because it's very tempting when you're doing it. You can basically do anything to just say, oh, I want this, I want that, and then it gets very quickly very complex. Where it's like, okay, I want to build maybe my own Calendly, but then also ask Claude or ChatGPT, like, but what is the minimum thing I should start with to get towards that, and then start in that way, and then slowly step by step make it bigger. Otherwise, you're probably really quickly going to get stuck.
That's cool. Katie, who's one of our presenters later, says she has some thoughts on the is SaaS question over. So we'll talk more about that. And then maybe one more question for you, Tim. Can you use regular analytics tools like Google Search Console, Fathom, or Clarity on a Vibe coded site? Like, can you pull data from those tools? Do you know off the top of your head to use in a marketing tool? Like, I guess Revive might be a good example of that.
Yeah, I mean, like Revive uses GA4. With this one, we've been thinking about like actually pulling in the data from Ahrefs or from SEMrush or something like that. We haven't built it in, but you can. I mean, essentially anything that has an API, you can build into your app. So I'm not. I guess Google Search Console probably also have. But yeah, we use GA4 to create now. Like, I make a lot of reports just through these kind of queries in Cursor instead of doing it through GA4 manually, which can be kind of hard, and you can make very specific queries. So that's, it's super cool. You can use it for sure for analytics.
So cool. Cool. Yeah. Tim, thank you so much. What a cool presentation. Also, it's like midnight there. So, thank you so much for staying up late to do this. We seriously appreciate it. Obviously, we're going to share the recording out so people can see all this. I put the link to Revive in the chat. I will put another link to the forecasting tool. I'll put a link to Animals. I'll put a link to your LinkedIn. I would encourage folks to hit Tim up on LinkedIn and connect. And sorry, Tim. Anywhere else we should send people?
No, that's fine. And feel free to reach out with questions and also feedback or ideas, because again, I'm also just learning, and it would be great to together get better at this and figure it out.
Awesome. Seriously appreciate it, Tim.